Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's your boy Carcino here. Want to welcome all of y'all to the show. Hit the like button right now as closing arguments began for the prosecution today on day 31. Day 30 was just lawyers talking back and forth for hours late at night. There was no need to go over that. I think we've covered enough of that. But let's cover this because I think this is very important. Now, going into this case, this is where the prosecution has to really do some landing of some blows, because they have been suffering in the last 48 hours. Poor, weak testimony, keeping text messages out of summary charts. They've done a lot of damage here. A lot of damage. And now it's go time. Oh yeah. Now you're gonna always see somebody come up and say something different. They're gonna say, oh, well, because now you're in the grease. You are in the grease. The prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Sean P. Diddy Combs is guilty. They kept saying he is the leader of a criminal enterprise. I'm like, you still trying to land that plane, babe? What enterprise? Oh my God. The more they say it, the weaker their case gets. But that's all they got to go on. The tone from the people inside of the courtroom informed me that the tone of the jury they were attentive. They were listening. The jury was listening with focus, like listening to every word. What you could see as the audience and the people that was listening to it, they started to get exhausted. They were like, oh, like, whoa, like this is just so much. Like you're rambling at this point. It's not there. She's trying to dumb it down. The prosecution, they're trying to dumb it down to make it sound as simple as possible, as if the jury is 5 years old. You know what a trafficking is? Remember when she said she saw him and she did not want to do it and they did it? I mean, really, she was explaining this as if she was an idiot. Like this woman was a complete moron. Like she was explaining it to these people as if they were just dumb. And she's treating the jury as if they're stupid. So it was a weird approach, but they went for it. But like I always say, here's where it gets interesting. The more they say, the less the defense has to open their mouth. That's right. The more they talk, the less the defense has to talk. Remember when we were having that conversation, everybody was up like, there's no character witnesses. That's because they've done such a piss poor job of presenting their case. The defense is high-fiving. Like, hey, we ain't got to call nobody. For what? What would be the reason for us to call somebody? That's a waste of time. No, we good. And it just weirdly started raining. That is rain, isn't it? How's it raining in just one spot? You see that? It is raining in one spot from the crib. Nowhere else. That's crazy. And then it just stopped. It did a little drizzle, then stopped. And I was just going to turn the water on. I don't trust it. I'll turn the water on. That's all you giving me is a little spit? Well, let me help you out. Appreciate you, but let me show you how it's done. All right, you supposed to come on with, come on. $90 degrees. Well, it ain't really getting off because he's innocent. So it's really an acquittal. Now, going into this thing, everybody might have had reservations about the guilt and innocence. But as this trial went on, you can see this is far from that. This is all about, oh, he ain't do it at all. This is just a relationship. All they confirmed was, oh, Diddy's a freak. Hey, man, Diddy a freak, y'all. Who didn't know that? So all this confirmed was Diddy was a freak. There was no underage people involved in the trial. There were no celebrities involved in the trial of this case. As far from a sexual standpoint, where he's having sex with underage girls, celebrity, all the salaciousness they tried to sell you on. That all these people like Teaser Tails and Dumb Bastard tried to keep throwing down your throat. That's what they want to push. Mm-hmm. Well, let's look into different situations that transpire. Because the more you do, the more you're going to understand the way this case is playing out. When you look at people that don't get it or don't understand the direction, and you start saying to yourself, well, I think I understand what they mean, but I'm not quite sure. What you're basically saying is, from a legal standpoint, he might be innocent. But morally, you don't like him. And that's fine. If you saying my morals don't agree with Diddy, that's fine. You don't morally have to support Sean Diddy Combs. If you saying morally, I can't support a man that do something like that, my religion won't let me do that, my morals as a man, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But his morality is not on trial. Don't let your dislike for what he is morally affect how you're doing your job in reporting what's happening in the trial by being biased and pushing mis and disinformation. That I have a problem with. I've been very consistent in that notion. Oh, they said Diddy was staring down and staring down the prosecution and giving them the stink eye. No, he wasn't. He was taking notes. He was looking at the judge, trying not to look at them. And while trying not to look at them, he's looking off somewhere else because he's not trying to get, kicked out of the courtroom or anything like that. So he's like, look, where can I look? And the lawyers are standing in between him, so he can't even do anything else. But here's the big kicker. While delivering this, the prosecution, they were quiet. They were calm. There was no emotion. They were content. It was like easy listening. So they came in this morning, and the judge said, good morning. We emailed the charge to the parties, not in the docket yet. But there are some times governments is capitalized. We changed that in the instructions about the witnesses. There should be no disruption during the closings. So he said, I'll tell the jurors that it'll be a shorter day today, but longer tomorrow. And then during the deliberations, it'll be up to them. So the government, she says, and he was like, AUSA Miss Slavic will be there at 10 to deliver the closing. And Alexandra Shapiro, there are some italics we want out. And they said, okay. So they took a break. They came back and the judge said, we will wait. Miss Comey, do we have the laptop ready? So AUSA Maureen Comey says, I'll defer to Miss Garagos. So Teeny comes in and said, we'll have it ready tomorrow. And the judge said, with only the admitted exhibits, I'll ask tomorrow. He said, let's get out our jury. So the jury comes on and the judge says, give your attention to the parties' closing arguments. Today will be shorter. The U.S. closing, tomorrow the defense. The rebuttal, my instructions, and begin deliberations. The jurors who will stay. So AUSA Slavic says, over the last few weeks, you've learned that Sean Combs is the leader of a criminal organization. He doesn't take no for an answer. He's into kidnapping, arson, forced labor, bribery of a security officer, and the brutal crimes of sex trafficking. Consider 2 moments. March 2016, at an Intercontinental Hotel, the defendant got violent with Cassie. You saw what happened. He dragged her back to the freak off. That's a lie. 2024, at Jane's house, the defendant choked and hit her. She ran, couldn't get away. That's another lie. There are chapters in this same book. The defendant counted on silence and shame. He thought that his fame and wealth and power put him above the law. Law meaning lying as witnesses, then yes. Over the last 7 weeks, you've heard how he used his staff to promote his power No one could stop him. We talk about RICO, including sex trafficking and transportation of prostitution, which are also separately charged as standalone crimes. You may have heard of racketeers. When someone commits crime as part of a group, they are more dangerous. A group of people whose purpose was to serve and protect the defendants. It's his kingdom. Everyone was there to serve him, fulfilling all of his desires, including his sexual desires. We need to show at least 2 racketeering crimes. She's rallying the jury. She's in there trying to bait them into making it. We only need 2. Come on, guys. The defendant, she's making it look, she's talking to this white jury to say, he's dangerous. Where did we see this before? White women saying black man is dangerous. The defendant was the head of the Combs enterprise. There was an inner circle staff and his bodyguards. The names changed, but the roles remained the same. You've heard about KK, Combs' right brain. She lives in 2-star. Yes, but you named her a co-conspirator, but you didn't put her on charges up there with Diddy, and you didn't name her as a witness. Why do you keep bringing her up if you ain't gonna do shit about it? She communicated with the defendant's girlfriends, his security. You heard their names: D-Rock, Bonds, Rube, Uncle Paulie, Fahim. They were armed and ready. Remember the incident at the diner with Suge Knight? David James told you Combs had guns. Hearsay. In the search, law enforcement found guns, including a rifle with a serial number defaced in LA, 2 AR-15s with their serial numbers cut off. In the defendant's closet, you also have the rotating cast of assistants paid by the defendant's business. Brendan Paul said he made $100,000 a year. KK made 6 times that. When your boss asks you to buy drugs, you're committing a crime. When you kidnap someone or locked a girlfriend in a hotel room after your boss stomped on her face, it's a crime. The law does not require us to know that they liked committing these crimes. You saw KK chiding the defendant to not be so reckless, but she got him cash and drugs. She was a member of the enterprise. It impacted interstate commerce. Minimal is fine. Combs knowingly became a member. He was the boss. He thought he was the through line, the racketeering acts, the distribution of drugs, the kidnapping, the arson, the bribery, the facilitating sex trafficking of Cassie and Jane, forced labor, travel for commercial sex, and a cover-up. You only need to find that someone would commit these 2 acts. In any of these categories, it would be 2 acts of drug distribution, 1 of kidnapping, or just 2. You have far more than 2. Let's start with drugs, an essential ingredient of freak-offs. How would you know? Have you been in one, Miss Lawyer? How do you know that's the ingredients of a freak-off? The most involved were D-Rock, KK, and Fahim, but others helped keep the drug supply high. We're not talking about marijuana, but Brendan Paul called hard drugs. There are stipulations of the drugs found in the searches: cocaine, meth, oxy, ketamine, a dissociative drug, GHB, mushrooms, Molly, Tusi, a combination of dyed pink. It's 1305 and 1306. The qualities are not relevant. It's not an element of this crime. Distribution does not require a sale. Oh, so they say distribution of it does not require a sale. Okay, so is he distributing it? If he gave somebody one, that's distribution? Jesus Christ. You know the names of the drug dealers by now. Guido, One Stop, Baby Girl. Jane told you that on 2 occasions she was told to bring drugs when she flew to meet him. She coordinated with KK. It's corroborated by text messages. KK told Jane to swing by the Mapleton to pick up the Guido package. He was called during hotel nights. So we know about the Guido packages and what they was. More ecstasy. The security team knew it all too. Guido texted Fahim. Puff had $450 balance with me. Brendan Paul asked for $780 for personal Gucci items. That's it. Hard drugs were distributed. It doesn't matter if he was buying keys or not, or selling them. Personal use is just a distraction. They bought and distributed to people around them. So that's a RICO? Jesus Christ. Cassie used drugs at every freak-off supplied by the defendant. He introduced Jane to drugs. Bullshit! Gave them to her at all but one hotel night. He gave drugs to Carrie Morgan and Bana Banagalan. Bullshit! He made Brendan Paul try Tusi to see if it was good. We're taking the credibility of the drug mule, saying that somebody gave him drugs and told him to try it. We introduced him as the drug mule. Oh, this is crazy. D-Rock would text One Stop. Need to see someone, bro. That is the defendant. Guido asked Fahim to cover for the defendant's drug debt. KK knew he was distributing drugs to the woman for the Wild Kings night. Jane told KK she was having a bad come down. KK gives pro tips how to deal with it. Plain and simple. This is drug distribution. How about kidnapping? They committed them both in California and New York law. Consider Cassie. Bond made her stay put. The defendant called Cassie a slut. He stomped on her face. She was disfigured. Roger Bonds called her and brought her back. The defendant made her go to the hotel on Sunset. He called her a slut and Cassie slapped him in the face. I don't see you mentioning that. Okay. So no one saw her. She wanted to go home to her mom, but no. It's clear Cassie did not consent to staying in the London hotel. David James testified that the defendant demanded to see his search history. If he had posted that the defendant assaulted Cassie in the clubs, then there's Capricorn Clark. They made her take a lie detector test for days in an empty office building in Manhattan. This was in 2004. She was holding expensive jewelry that went missing. Uncle Polly took her to the future headquarters of Bad Boy, and she was tested for 5 lies. 5 times they tested her, even though she kept going on her own as kidnapping. The man, I don't understand this. How are you kidnapping somebody when she leaves and go home, or they take her home and then they pick her up and bring her right back the next day? That's kidnapping? That's the weirdest kidnapping I've ever seen in my life. The man administering the test told her if she failed, she'd end up in the East River. Again, how this relates to Diddy. In Central Park, the defendant told her if anything happened, he'll have to kill her. Well, where's the man in Central Park? Sounds like you need to look for the Central Park man. David James remembers this. He was tested too to get a rat out of the team. Okay, was Diddy there doing the test? No. So I don't understand. What's your point? In December 2011, Rube helped the defendant kidnap Capricorn Clark. It was started on December 22nd, 2011. The defendant banged on Capricorn's door with a gun. He was out for revenge. He barked an order at Capricorn, "Get dressed. We're going to kill Cudi." Jesus Christ. They drove to Kid Cudi's house. The defendant had a gun in his lap. This was kidnapping. He says, if the closing argument, did the prosecutions really say the baby oil was made in Miami, so the trafficking baby oil can't make this up? Well, we finna get to this. We're gonna get to it. Thanks for the super chat, Fila. These are the transcripts of what went down. So they said this was kidnapping. He moved her for a substantial distance. The defendant said he wouldn't let her. Told her she brought him into Cassie, who he kicked when she arrived into a fetal position. Cassie, who was with Kid Cudi that morning, testified with this. The officer who responded to the 911 call, he saw a black Escalade registered to Bad Boy. Then on January 12th of 2012, the defendant had Kid Cudi's car set on fire. Arson. How? There's nothing connecting him to this. Someone cut a hole in the roof of Kid Cudi's car and dropped a Mazel Tov cocktail. We're not suggesting the defendant cut the hole. He didn't even buy his own suit. You've heard the voice in notes. He said he was going to blow up Kid Cudi's car. What are the odds? He says it and it happened. The coincidences, the car did not blow up, so I don't know what you're talking about. The coincidences just keep on coming. The defendant and Rube just happened to be there a few weeks before. Kid Cudi was driving the same Porsche the night of the trespass. What are the odds? Kid Cudi had conflicts with on one except the defendant. Then D-Rock called Kid Cudi. He brought Kid Cudi to the defendant, who was looking like a Marvel supervillain. How was he looking like a Marvel supervillain? I don't even know. What does a Marvel supervillain looks like? Should have been struck out of conversation. Years later, the defendant apologized to Kid Cudi. Then there's Bribery, the 2016 video. The defendant was having a freak off with Cassie. One of the escorts, Jules Flores, found the defendant sitting in a chair with what was a devilish stare in the room. He saw another man, the defendant, trying to hand Flores a stack of money. It was the first attempt at a bribe that day. As Cassie leaves, Combs starts damage control. We had a power issue. Is your mic working? The judge said that. She says, hello, yes. He called Cassie over a dozen times. The text, call me, cops are here. He was just manipulating her. But the defendant knew he could be arrested. There was video of this assault. He went and banged on Cassie's door with a hammer. Neighbors were going to call the police. They did, in fact, go. Kerry Morgan had the LAPD card. KK suggests, well, she had the card. Did she call it? No, he was never arrested. KK suggests, say that they had a fun, drunk night. She calls and reaches Eddie Garcia. Eddie says no. Then KK shows up in person. He won't show her, but says off the record, it's bad. KK has the defendant call Eddie on a personal cell phone. Once Eddie says his boss would do it for $50,000, the defendant called him Eddie, my angel. That's how he saved it in the cell phone. Eddie goes to deliver the USB. D-Rock and KK are there. The defendant counted out dollars by dollar, the bribe. It's not a bribe. If somebody said this is what it's going to cost and you pay it, how the hell is that a bribe? In other words, the dude was basically, well, it's not extortion because he was never planning on releasing it. He was just saying, you want this gone, it's going to be 50,000. Because they're going to sell it to TMZ. Somebody will. Yeah, Diddy chair was away from everybody. He was looking around to try to see the testimony, looking past the lawyers. Praying in silence was influencing the testimony if their opening thing was going on. And they said the defense suggested it was just bad publicity. Police involvement would hurt him. The two are connected. The next is the racketeering predicate. It's sex trafficking. The defendant, inner circle assisted, whether they wanted to or not. Threats, drugs, lies, illegal violence to make them all have sex with escorts. This is not an attempt to criminalize dysfunctional relationships or personal sexual behavior. They did not want to have sex with strangers while the defendant masturbated. They were covered in oil and were sore all over and over again. We're not asking you to find every hotel night and freak off who was sex trafficked, or the majority. You only need to find the elements were met one time, one freak off. That's it. He's guilty. But way more than just one. Let's start with Jane. That's what they want to start. Let's start with Jane. Turn off the public screens. So the defense, they're sitting there with their hands on their chin. They was consider this sobriety party, and it's in Jane's house. Let's start with the love bombing stage. Johnny was head over heels in love. They traveled to the Caribbean. Dr. Hugh talked about this. She met with him and any witnesses, but it was like she knew them. Love bombing is a tactic. He was grooming her. He was grooming a gold digger. Oh, Jesus Christ. He gave Jane ecstasy. She fell to the ground, conversing. The defendant liked baby oil and red lights. I didn't know baby oil and red lights was a crime. All right. Hit the like button, good people. Stay ahead of the situation. All right, it's raining now. I can go and cut the water off. Seems like it's ready to rain. Oh yeah, it's coming down. Oh yeah, it's coming down now. All right, I'm gonna go get wet. I ain't gonna take the phone with me. Hold on, I'm gonna come back soaked. I'm gonna come back wet like Diddy. Woo! I was quick with it, boy. Who could dance in the water and not get wet? It don't stop. It don't stop. Yeah. Game rules as I spit to these lame fools. Now, here we go. We continue. Did he like baby oils and red lights? We didn't know that was a crime. Did you know baby oil and red lights is a crime? Then hell, they might well arrest me at 95. They said, then he introduced in May 2021, she wanted to please her partner. She was high. The defendant had a freak off set up that very night. An escort came. Jane was excited by the first experience. She didn't realize she had opened Pandora's box. It became 90% of their relationship. For a while, she went along. Then she told him she wanted it to stop. There are texts about this. And then she says, Jane wrote, I wanted to do things outside of these rooms, to travel with you. But you just said they traveled to the Caribbean. That is traveling, right? All right, well, let's not just do that. The defendant ignored Jane's discomfort. Those hotels nights were not about Jane, what Jane wanted. They were about what the defendant wanted to see. He decided how long it would go. Jane said if she was going to have sex with strange men, she should choose which. The defendant made her ask them for nude photos. These were not for her. When she asked to use protection, the defendant was not happy. He was dismissive and condescending, but she used it. She would try to have it go faster. He ordered her to slow it down. It was about what he wanted. He dangled carrots. He gave her gifts and money. He lied to her repeatedly. She asked, when are we gonna get away? He said they'll go on a yacht, but they didn't. Why didn't she fucking leave? If she's so unhappy, no one's holding her there. She could leave at any time she felt like leaving. Ask your client, why did Jane stay if she don't want to do these things? Because she's a whore and a gold digger. But that's neither here nor there. Let's go. Here's what Jane wrote in her notes app. I didn't want to have you use me to fulfill your freaky wild desires in hotel rooms. Then what else would you be used for, huh? You do a juggling act? You juggle knives? What talent do you got? He used his payments of her rent as leverage. The carrot turned into a stick. She wrote, the threats of innuendos are nonstop. He paid for her veneers because he didn't like her teeth. Then said, look at the roof over your head and your pretty mouth and your teeth. He wanted an all-star party. Sex with 3 men. She sent a photo of her period blood. He sent this voice note. I'm about to really disappear on you. I don't have no time for this, baby girl. You got to be on my job. You got to get on your job. This message couldn't be clearer. Not going to take no for an answer. Slav. She was looking down and reading her closing statement from a binder she had in the lecture, saying, after reading Cassie's lawsuit, Jane writes to the defendant, I feel like I'm reading my own sexual trauma. 2, on my birthdays, you forced me. Jane wrote, you gaslit me. It was sexual exploitation. You framed as love for your 6 fetishes. The defendant called her and tried to trick her into saying she consented to all of it. He fed her false narratives. Listen to this clip. He talked over her. Dr. Hughes told you how a victim is trauma bonded to her abuser. Jane often felt the defendant didn't listen to the truth. She said Sean would say just this to move on. He told her to charge him, that lawyers would be involved to buy her silence. So she asked for $100,000 a year to move on. She thought it was reasonable, far less than Cassie. The defendant went ballistic. She refused to adopt her false narratives. You can read the text messages. So she plays the text messages, so showed them to the jury. And they said Jane wrote that the defendant was going to show her sex tapes of her father of her child. Then he reached out and told her to come see him in Miami. She made it clear he doesn't want a hotel night. He says okay despite his promise. He called an escort. Here are more threats about the rent. Jane writes, I hate worrying about the rent. This is in 2024. It's all accumulated in June 2024. He assaulted her. So this is the narrative that they're going to run with. It seems like this is the running joke that isn't a joke, but they're running with this same narrative over and over again. And because they keep running with the narrative, they think, well, we keep running with it, it's going to make it a reality. It's going to make it true. So, okay, if it makes it true, then what is reality and what isn't reality? That's what you got to start asking yourself, because if it's not ringing true, then maybe it just probably isn't true. Then they said in 2024, in 2024, he assaulted her. He forced her to perform oral on an escort. This is sex trafficking. It was interstate, and the Astroglide crossed state lines. The defendant knew of reckless disregard that threats of force, coercion, or fraud were used. Consenting once doesn't mean she consented every time. One time is enough. In 2023, he made Jane feel like she had a proper NYC weekend but invited escorts. Jane sent him another message. It's dark and sleazy, in fear of losing my home. His response, girl, stop. Then he FaceTimed her and told her about stopping and dinner. He lied. Look. He is also texting Paul, author, and escort. Look at these messages. He is setting up a hotel night. When she is in the air, he tells her he has a surprise for her. She didn't want it. Before that plane lands, it is a completed act of sex trafficking. He tricked her. Then, under coercion, she calls Cabral to come to New York. In the next text, she says, in New York, I knew you would pair me up with a random person. In the sobriety party, without drugs, she was so disgusted, she vomited. I am not an adult film star. I am not an animal. I need a break. And he responds, let's spend the day together. No strangers. She replies, you'll love bomb me. He switches from carrot to stick. The house, he texts, are you going to let me in our house? He says that 5 to 8 times. Then he said he was sick and needed her. She went and had sex with 3 different men without drugs. And after vomiting, he said, get back out there. 2024 in Jane's house. 3 months after Homeland Security agents searched the defendant homes, they used Jane's house. He came there. They were supposed to have a fun date night. They drank and argued. She pushed his head into a counter. He shouted at her. She told him to leave. She ran and closed the doors. He kicked down 3 doors. You saw the doors. Here's one of them on the screens. She ran without shoes. She hid. He was waiting. Jane hit the defendant. Then he punched her in the face. Here are the photos. Once you said Jane hit the defendant, you've already screwed up. She rammed his head into the thing first. So she was the one violent. Then she hit him, and then he punched her in the face. It takes 2 to tango, and nobody should be hitting anybody in a relationship. But if you are violent, with this man. What is he supposed to do? She was the first person that committed violence. But let's go. He dragged her by her hair into the house. Jane took his phone and called the other woman. She shouted. The defendant called Jonathan Perez. He followed her into the shower and then hit her, knocking her down. He called Anton the escort and told her to have sex with him. She put on makeup to hide her injuries. She drove to pick up Anton at the gate. Then the defendant said, "Take this effing pill." Put it in her face, inches from her, and asked her, "Is this coercion?" She was blatantly acknowledging he was breaking the very same law he violated before. Jane didn't want to have sex with the escort that night. She said no, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. Jane performed oral until Anton ejaculated. The defendant told this security to bring the cash to Anton. They didn't have it. The next day, he gave Jane the money to pay Anton. She Ubered the bag of money over to him. That was coercion. At that appropriate time, we're going to take a lunch break. And they went and took a break. They came back from eating. I'm like, who can eat after hearing about the last thing you said is somebody climaxing on somebody? Who can eat after that? What are you going to say? Pass the gravy. So they go to eat. They come back. So they said, well, just the flag for the court. We're going to need to change PowerPoints. So the clerk comes in. Right. The court comes back in and they say, you may proceed. He said, let's get back. The 3 nights were part of a buildup from fraud to coercion to final force. And they said, I apologize. Do you need to charge the batteries? So they come in, they said they need AA batteries. Swear to God, this happened. So the house was just an example of Diddy's financial coercion of Jane, she says. Also drugs, they came as a necessary part of the sex. Jane told you about Miami in 2024. He gave her liquid Molly. They showed you the videos. They argue that she was super into it, but she was super, super high. His coercion included threats to release tapes of her having sex in hotel rooms. Combs threatened to send tapes to Jane's child's father. This was to coerce her into more commercial sex acts. The defense has suggested that Jane agreed to these hotel nights. Let's talk about what agreeing means. There is an incomplete picture. Let's turn to volume 2. We're going to talk about Cassie with several examples. You know from sitting through this trial that force was not limited to these days. Through the decades that they were together, he forced her to have sex with escorts. Cassie was 19. He was in his 30s. He signed her to a 10-album record deal. He took her on a yacht, gave her ecstasy. They had sex. They were in a relationship. She had just turned 21. The defendant was her boss, who called all the shots. He molded her. He told Capricorn, let me show you. Then ordered Cassie around. She did it. Walked around, turned around, total compliance. He didn't take no for an answer. He was abusive, physical, emotional, psychological, sexual. Sound like she want him. I'd be like, do you want him? He right over there. They want you to call this domestic violence. But he was forcing her to have freak-offs. He controlled everything. He demanded that her nails be done a certain way on red carpets. That's a crime? The Vanity Fair party in 2014, Dion Nash told you he shouted. I thought I told you she had to have her hair up. He wouldn't let her make money from her music. She was offered the chance to do a Common video. Puff said no. He paid for her car and clothing and phones and vacation. He made her dependent. If she's his artist, quite sure he has the right to decline features or, whatever the business purposes are. You didn't go into that to see why he said no. You're just trying to attach his saying no as it didn't work for business. Even though she was paid more than any artist in the history of Bad Boy Records. But hey, what could I tell you? He did it to her family too. After she found out she was with Kid Cudi, he demanded $20,000 from her parents to pay him back, or he would release sex tapes. That month, in just his account, he had $3.2 million coming in and going out. This was about control. Remember what Dr. Hughes said: when a victim is unsure, floating around, the abuser has control. He punched her, kicked her, dragged her. When it was bad, he hid her in hotels to heal and not be seen. You saw photos and video. D-Rock, Rube, Paulie, they knew. He attacked her for attending a Prince party until Prince security intervened. Mia and Myra Morales described the abuse to you. Cassie told you when she got to the house, he threatened to release the tapes. He assaulted her in Jamaica. He beat her up in Las Vegas. That sounds like domestic to me. While she was curled up under the toilet, she said D-Rock cried. There was his assault at the Continental Hotel. Domestic to me. For Cassie, it was normal. She was there when he attacked Mia, Deontay Nash, and Banner. Sounds like an abusive person, domestic state charges to me. Banner may have gotten the dates wrong, but she had been injured. One time, she may have gotten the dates wrong. Well, she couldn't get the dates wrong because the photo was time stamped. One time, he had Cassie to hold guns for him. The diner and Suge Knight incident. Cassie was in the house. She saw. Why didn't she leave? Mrs. Hughes explains that hitting leads to fear. Here's somebody who has never, ever done this, right? She only deals with this type of courtroom situation, and she's paid for the government to come in there and say something, and she's never, in all of her cases, said anything, but this is the same diagnosis she does in every case. So how good is she really? She's never interviewed Cassie. This doctor they're talking about has never interviewed Cassie. How can you make an assessment of Cassie's mental state if you're not even there? You haven't even talked to this person. So you know her mental state to know what she's doing and everything else. Oh my God. She's about to ice up. I told her to chill out. They met for dinner in Malibu. Then he R-worded her on the living room floor. She said no. She cried, but he didn't take no for an answer. He R-worded her. He wrote, I could tell you I didn't turn on you yesterday. That is, he R-worded her. Because of that trauma bond, and after the R word, she met him at a friend's party and then they had sex. Trauma bond? Nobody does that. Nobody goes and sleeps with the person that R-worded them at a friend's party and they see each other and they have sex. I'm sorry, it don't work that way. Consensual sex. This was trauma bond. He had an MO. An hour-long performance. He masturbated and sometimes filmed it, just like with Jane. She keeps bringing this up. But that's a bad look. You mentioned the fact that she was R-worded, and in the next line you're talking about they had consensual sex after that. Who does that? Sometimes the defendant told escorts to urinate on her. Sometimes he urinated himself. Why? To turn himself on. She began drug addictions, where she wrote, I love our freak offs, when we both wanted. Jurors, this is not at all nothing or nothing situation. This is, oh my God. She said, there were times we knew she didn't want to do it. That is sex trafficking. She obviously didn't want to have an escort urinate in her mouth while she's laying on the floor. Let's talk about these videos. You've seen the clips. You don't see weapons. You see her having sex, playing with herself. The defendant is moving the camera around at times, focus on the escort, not Cassie, at all. It's clear this was about his fantasy, not Cassie's. March 5th, 2016, in the Intercontinental Hotel, the video. Before the Intercontinental Hotel, Cassie had a premiere. It was a big night for her. She agreed to a freak off as damage control. Look at this. She says, I don't want you thinking I don't want to. She knows the defendant wouldn't take no for an answer. That's you trying to suggest that the defendant gets Jules to come. You know what happens? An argument. The defendant hits Cassie in the face. All she could think about is her premiere. She takes off without her shoes. He throws her to the ground. He kicks her, then drags her back to the room where Jules is waiting. Why is the dragging relevant? Because Jules is there. Freak-offs have multiple sessions. They were between sessions. He leaves her, but he takes her bags. But she doesn't follow. Instead, Cassie using the phone elevator lobby. The defendant is making another conscious decision to take the bags into the room, then come back for Cassie with his hands free. He grabs the phone, then makes a decision to stay. He stays even though he's in a towel and looks ridiculous. After Flores arrives, he stalls in the hall. He knows Jules is still on the room, possibly naked. The defendant claims he took back the drugs that day, but you can see he's in control. Cassie just wanted to get her bag and phone and leave. The defendant offered Flores money. This is a photo of Jane in the car, back at her house with sunglasses, her black eye. He was using force to get Cassie to continue with a freak off. The defendant may tell you the violence was not connected to sex, but it was an attempt to get Cassie to continue with a freak off. Later, she wrote to him, I'm not a rag doll. I'm someone's child. There were freak offs in New York with Daniel Phillips. Phillips was not paid for his time. This is ridiculous argument. In one freak off between sessions, the defense told Cassie to come in the bedroom. The defendant, she kept using the computer. The defendant threw a bottle and dragged her, then slapped her. I'm serious, that's what it says. It dragged her and slapped her. Are they messing with the audio and the video? Can you hear everything? Are they messing with the audio and video? Okay. They say Philip Daniels heard Combs yell, B, when I tell you to come here, you come here. And after that, Daniel Phillips could not perform. But a complete act is not required for sex trafficking. This is sex trafficking in Canes. They were at a film festival. The defendant accused Cassie of stealing his drugs. He threw her off the boat where they were staying. Mia heard the audio of this, recognized the voices. They flew back to New York. She traded seats to get away from him, but he followed and showed her freak-off videos. He threatened to release these tapes when they got to New York. They had a freak-off. This is another example of clear-cut coercion. He threw her off the boat without her passport. He wanted Cassie to be afraid to say no to him. Cassie said, I didn't know what no would mean. What no would turn into. He could be violent. The defense said Cassie made a choice every day to stay with him. Step back. Imagine yourself as Cassie. This was the force. This was the leverage. There were drugs, disassociative, numbing. She needed that buffer. Yes, some of the messages are explicit. That doesn't mean she wanted to have sex with escorts at freak-offs. When she says, I'm always ready to freak off, what does that mean? I don't know. Well, anyway, and she says in 2009, he wrote, you're supposed to be seducing me all day. Cassie told the defendant she didn't want to do freak-offs. Take her birthday party. Deontay told you about. He demanded she freak off, and she did. What choice did Cassie have in the end? She didn't have the freedom to make voluntary adult choices. Let's go back to count one for a minute. While it was the defendant in the freak-offs, he had help from KK, D-Rock, Fahim. They knew it was wrong. How did they facilitate? KK got strange men to assess the rooms. The defendant and Cassie shared. KK got Clinton Howard, Dave, access to those rooms. Jonathan Perez found the video of Cassie with the escort. He showed it to KK. She knew. Da-na-na-da-na. She knew. So now, once again, they keep bringing up KK, but you ain't bring her up in no charges. Why is that? Mm-hmm. Yep. That's what I'm trying to tell people about all the time. It's like you ain't brought this woman up in no charges. You didn't make her a witness because you know you can't get her for nothing. Yeah. She told KK. KK still sent stuff out for the Wild Nights. D-Rock iced Cassie's black eyes. It would be absurd to think D-Rock didn't know what they were doing. Of course he knew. I expect the defense will say they didn't know. You don't even, what you mean you expect them to not say? Of course they're going to say they didn't know. They're going to say, well, they didn't know. They're going to say they didn't participate. Like, they didn't do anything illegal. They're not on trial. Why don't you have them? Why don't you put them in custody and as co-conspirators? That's your job. David James saw a stranger. Dion Nunich saw one. Jonathan Perez saw a video of Jane having sex with another man while the defendant watched. Interstate travel for prostitution. The defendant paid escorts. He called the travel. He sometimes booked it. The transportation counts do not require force, fraud, or coercion. If it's all consented, we all know that's not true. It's still a crime. It's just knowing transportation with the intent the individual engaged in prostitution. Count 3, freak-offs involving Cassie. The escort's travel was often booked by a travel agent. She remembers Dave. Clinton Howard, he would travel from New York all the way to Miami to LA. Another escort traveled to Ibiza. Look at GX 1402. This was Jules Theodore at the London Hotel in New York City. The defendant asked for Jules. The name on the ticket, the defendant's Amex, shows he paid for a car. There's a $2,000 bill from the London Hotel. The defendant texts, I will tip you. For what? Sex? You don't know what he tipping for. Tipping is not a crime. For this incident alone, the defendant is guilty under count 3, but there are more. Jules at the London Hotel, starting at 7 a.m. Consider this. Paul's going to Turks. The defendant says, how should I pay? He paid for Paul's travel to Turks for sex. You don't know why he paid him there. If they decided to have sex later, that's their own prerogative. He could have been paying him because he wanted him to come over and enjoy the trip. You can't just say that's the reason and throw it on somebody. He said Reggie flew to Las Vegas to LA for sex. He is never tired. Jane sent $1,100 cash app. There's a Hotel Folio, $4,000 of damage. The hotel staff found body fluids on the floor. It couldn't be clearer. Every time KK helped arrange travel for Wild Kings Night, she was part of the crime. She may not have liked it, but she did it. KK set up travel for Wild Kings Nights in Vegas. The wildest Wild Kings Night in Las Vegas. KK knows. KK helped Calvaro book his travel. Combs asked her for cash. She knows exactly what's going on. She facilitated travel for the escorts, each of her racketeering acts. You only need to find 2 acts. She's there. She is once again trying to coerce the jury to find 2 acts to convict Diddy on. Like, you only got to find 2. Come on, guys, work together here. We got to do it. We've already kicked out a black juror who knew this was some bull. That's why they had to get rid of him. He wasn't going along with protocol. They were like, we got a problem with this guy. The Bronx guy. That's some bull. Them hoes want money. I know all about it. Well, sir, are you still living in the Bronx? Well, I am from the Bronx. I just moved out to Jersey. Oh, well, that's terrible. That's terrible. You can't be on the trial no more. They snatched his butt off the trial so quick. Well, nothing wrong with that guy being on that damn jury. He did his job. He ain't violate nothing. Y'all had him marked the day he was there. Just because he black. They ain't want no brother out there. You know what was going on. They knew what time it was. They didn't want him out there because he was black. And that was it. He was not going along with the BS. Mm-hmm. Now, yeah, they're like, you only need to find 2 acts just here. There are dozens. Take a break. They come back. They said, how much time do you need? She said, She says, 1 more hour, Judge. I swear I'll be done in 1 more hour. And he was like, all right, you got 1 more hour. So she's like, I expect the judge will instruct you on forced labor laws and show you a chart. Here it is. You heard of forced labor of 4 women, Cassie, Jane, Mia, and Capricorn. Cassie and Jane, it was a grueling sexual service. Cassie called them grueling, up to 4 days, maybe even more. Jane said the same thing. Cassie and Jane were only called to perform freak-offs for the defendant whenever he wanted. Whenever he wanted. He used force or threats of force. He would say, let's finish on a high note. Let's push through this. You're not tired, are you?
Hello, Moto.
Said, you're not tired, are you? And he said, it took weeks to recover from these freak-offs. That's forced labor. KK kept setting up hotel rooms and flights. Let's turn to Mia. She worked for Combs, finally at Revolt. She went 5 days without sleep. Combs SA'd her. He put his hand up her dress. He came into her bedroom and penetrated her. He came into the closet and forced her to perform oral on him. There was a time in the bathroom of a private jet she can't fully remember. Repeated traumatic events. So if she can't remember, how do we know what she's saying is true? She was clear as a bell, even under cross-examination. She performed labor and services, including sexual services. He threw her against a wall, slammed her into a door. She saw violence at Prince's party and at Turks. When they were in South Africa, KK told Mia, if you don't call him in 10 minutes, you don't have a job. He has all the power and control. She knew she couldn't say no, even to little things. Mia knew that her job was to protect the defendant. HR was for Combs. She couldn't go to the police due to Combs' power. His threats left her with no options. I guess you're going to hear that she could have left and that she told Combs she loved him. Mia pulled no punches that were high highs and low lows. Capricorn Clark had an issue with overtime. She took the issue to the head of resources, HR, Vashta Wilson, but HR was the defendant's puppet. The defendant and Uncle Paulie threatened her in Central Park and the lie detector test and taken to Kid Cudi's. Capricorn had a son to provide for. Threatened to blacklist her, now witness tampering and obstruction after Cassie filed her lawsuit. This weaves the whole story together, Chain wrote. You gaslit me. She posed a problem for the defendant. So Combs called Jane. The calls were recorded on KK's phone. You can listen to them. On November 19th, 2023, Cassie's lawsuit was already settled, but he is afraid of the criminal investigation. He calls and asks, what can I do to make you feel better? He says, I can't be speaking on the phone. He is worried the U.S. will get 3 years off his text messages with Jane while he's recording the call. He tries to convince her she was willing. He says, we just did some kinky stuff I thought we both enjoyed. Do you hear on the recorded call the sound of the notes being taken with a Sharpie? How to plan to get away with what he wants to say to Jane? You've seen that in this trial, the lawyers passing notes to each other. Do you hear on the recorded call the sound notes being taken with a Sharpie, the plan to get what they want Jane to say? You've seen that in this trial, these lawyers are just passing notes to each other. Then Combs and D-Rock reaches out to Mia, asking her to say something. Mia told you her reaction to this call. She's seen the defendant bash in Cassie's head. It's a gross exaggeration, but okay. D-Rock had seen it too. He was asking her to agree with a lie. Domestic violence, domestic violence, domestic violence. As the federal investigation grew, they kept reaching out to Mia. D-Rock calls her 5 times in a row. The chart. Right? The chart they got. Mrs. Sankier presented to you brings this, and they showed Diddy's family. They was in the courtroom. They said the defendant's conduct towards Mia is also obstruction and witness tampering. Also, obstruction. The video of the intercontinental assault is bribery, but also obstruction. Finally, venue. We only have to show an act in this district. Doesn't have to be criminal. Southern District of New York includes Manhattan, the Bronx as count 2. Freak-offs in Manhattan. Count 3. Freak-offs, Jules to the London Hotel in Manhattan. Count 4. Jane in Manhattan. You spent 7 weeks listening to a lot of evidence. It was hard to hear or see. You heard from Kid Cudi, whose house was broken into, whose car was burned. You heard from Regina Ventura. Deontay Nash. Now he ran an empire with total control. It is time. We hold him accountable. This time, it is time to find him guilty. And they said, we'll continue tomorrow, George. Do not watch or read anything about the case. All rise. All right, adjourned. So finally, they are done. Man, she told so many lies. I can't wait till the defense tear her ass up tomorrow, because this woman went up there and just lied. I've never seen so many misinformation, disinformation. He did this. He has not been charged with anything in the Kid Cudi case whatsoever. Why in the hell do you keep bringing up Kid Cudi? All right, she's bringing up all this circumstantial evidence. Dude, you have really, they finna eat the you. The defense is finna eat the you tomorrow. Oh, they can't wait. All of this circumstantial garbage trying to get 2 charges. We could do it. Come on. We could really try. Come on, just 2. There's so many. We only need 2. The forced labor stuff was such a joke. I'm just like, really? Yep. Well, the prosecution has cut themselves pretty thin, because they told a lot of inaccuracies in what they were saying, and they knew they were inaccuracies. They're saying it as if it's fact. There's no proof. Well, he said he was going to do it, and then, well, all of these coincidences. I don't think it's a coincidence. I mean, why didn't you ask the fact? Why wasn't there a criminal charge against Sean Diddy Combs? So you want us to include this in a federal case years later that you knew nothing about, that never was a case that was involving Mr. Combs. They say it's an open investigation, but they might as well close it because they didn't even investigate it because they got no cooperation from Mr. Kid Cudi, who never followed up on it. They had DNA evidence, and now the slides are gone. They trying to make it look like Diddy paid to get rid of the slides. When the sheet said it was female DNA found on the Molotov bottle. Now they're saying, well, we're not saying Mr. Combs actually put the bottle in there. But this is just so happened, this is the same car he was driving. Kid Cudi got 2 Porsches. Kid Cudi did not follow up on a police report. He was not actively trying to find out the perpetrators and bring them to justice. Mm-hmm. Oh, they gonna come for everybody now. Mm. Yeah, it's like when you see these people that they care so much about nonsense and they're acting like they're bringing justice when the only thing they're bringing is their own poor attitude, poor everything, right? Well, it's not even about that. It's about the fact that when you came in here in this chat, you were going to get what actually was there. Not really. Mm-hmm. No. There are so many different elements out there that people just don't understand. And it's okay. We get it. Not all of it is for you to understand. Sorry about that. That was my nephew coming through. The internet is undefeated, boy. Look how they got me in a meme. Oh my goodness. That's crazy. Y'all are funny. I got memes already. Now, there's always a problem. There's always a problem. It's about who gonna figure it out. Do I think the prosecution did anything good in this trial? Not really. They doing a good job of causing disinformation and misinformation and circumstantial evidence that they're trying to make. They're trying to make that the main evidence. I mean, it's circumstantial. Most of this stuff is hearsay. No. Well, they want to make it look like a situation that isn't happening is happening, or a situation that was happening or wasn't happening, or is it happening or is it not happening. All these people need to. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, when it's all said and done, which one would you rather be? They keep hammering the point that they only need two. Now that was a bit strange. Like they kept trying to hammer home, we only need two, we only need two. Come on, y'all, we just need y'all to approve 2 charges so we can throw them in jail. To me, that's not going over evidence. You're going over social media garbage. You're going over domestic violence. You're not proving trafficking at all. These guys are entertainers and escorts. They're hired for whatever the other reasons may be. And if they want to get down, they can get down. He can give them some money to go back and forth. That's a great area. They were in a relationship with each other. Oh, yeah, without a doubt. They're going to push that narrative because that's the only narrative that's left for them to push. That's why they're going to push the narrative. Oh, without a doubt. Well, when you're doing something that makes sense, then, that's when you'll feel better about it. But when you're seeing something that don't make sense, then yeah, well, we'll see how it works. Oh, I often thought that they would go ahead and right. I often thought they would find Diddy guilty, and then he would appeal and win the appeal because of lack of evidence. When all the eyes of the world here, they just want to see Diddy guilty, so everybody could cheer and jump up and down. I mean, it ain't just dumb bastard. You got a guy who's a Christian who's basically judging Diddy off his Christian morality. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff going on. Yesterday was no real surprises with the draft. I will do a live stream probably tonight, and we'll go over all the picks and all the moves. Oh man, no, not really. Not really. I mean, the prosecution did a lot in laying out. Man, no, not really. Only 70% of the people believes like that they've proven enough. It was like 67. It was like, who thinks Diddy is guilty? They had like 60 something percent saying, oh, he guilty. Well, no, I never cared about that part of it. Most people that don't listen to the trial or cover the trial and go over all the evidence. They only hear what the prosecution is saying. How many times do you see a video or anybody talking about what the defense has said? It's all about what these people talking about the prosecution. Oh, the prosecution said this, the prosecution said that. Nothing has been about what Diddy has said, or I mean, what the prosecution's defense have said in the case. Only time they say, oh, they want a dismissal. Yeah, pretty much. When you're looking as glamorous and you're out there being fabulous in front of everyone on television and you're going through all of this stuff, dressing up and talking to the media, then they love you. Everybody is so excited. Then all of a sudden, the walls fall out and you're stuck. You're in a bad situation. You're in a situation that doesn't resonate well with you. Everybody wants to get away from you soon, quick, fast as possible. Yeah, well, when you get into that situation, man, I look crazy on that doggone picture. Man, I've been up for like 18 hours straight. Mm-hmm. Money brings envy. The majority of these witnesses that they said they had good character. Oh yeah. How these witnesses credible? Hmm? Majority of them are money hungry people. Mm-hmm. Nah. I'm a wait until the right. I'm gonna wait until into the closing arguments. Watch what the defense do. Mm-hmm. Man, that's what I'm saying. You got to be careful out here in these situations. Like domestic situations, they always try to make it look one-sided. A woman can be just as violent as a man. I've seen it. I've seen a woman beat a man up and they kick it right off. Yeah, they'll kick it off. Because they know the judge ain't gonna do none of them for being violent. I already told you what happened in a hood story. Guy came home. He had been home probably about a week and a half or 2 weeks. His girl drunk, and she stumbled down the, you walk in through the door and it's like 3 steps to get to the kitchen. It's just 3 steps. And then down there is the steps going down. So she was talking and forgot about the 3 steps and fell down to the thing. It's only 3 steps. And she stumbled and he laughed. That what your drunk ass get. She was like, I called the cops and said you pushed me. And she did. Playing around. Playing around. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they could be just as violent. She called the cops on him and he told her, he's like, they looking for me to go back. And soon as she tried to no, once she had the cops come there, they arrested him. And then she tried to go down there and drop the charges. Like, nah, he ain't do that. I'm dropping the charge. He was like, well, okay, we gonna arrest you for filing a false police report. So you gonna go to jail for wasting our time. We gonna get you for filing a false police report. So which one you want to do? And he told her, don't play with the cops because this cop is mad I'm at home. He want me locked up anyway. And she did it, and they put him into a case, and he was mad. He was in jail, had to go through this trial and all this, and she was, I'm sorry, I tried to tell him it was this. And they was like, well, we're going to get you for filing a false police report. So she's like, I had to go through with it. He's like, I told you, don't call these people. Playing around because you drunk. Now I got to go through this whole case, being locked up. They're going to push the case way back, try to keep me locked up, saying he got priors. Yeah, well, that's how it goes. So a woman can be just as violent as a man. I done seen women kill their baby daddies, said that he was attacking me and all this, so I had no choice. And the courts will go along with it until they investigate it. The family start pushing for it. Yeah. Well, when you see things that are not usually abundant, then you'll start to figure it out for yourself. Right. But Shouts out to the real. Welcome to HDII TV. Kwame Brown, Bust Life. And we'll be back with the defense tomorrow. 2 Raw for TV, 78 Sports TV. Don't forget to go to the Patreon, Casino for Life Patreon, so you can be caught up on all the updates. We had some more explosive news yesterday, so the hits keep on coming. And we'll see y'all later on.